Hi there, my name is Olu Sonia. I'm Executive Director here at Success-Prep, success-prep.com, and I'm here to share with you some of the top 7 changes to the new SAT coming up in March 2016. All right, so looking at the graphic you have right next to this image here, we have the new SAT in March 2016 will be a perfect score. The perfect score will be a 1600 on that new SAT. This is compared to the current SAT, which is a 2400 perfect score, meaning they're getting the 2400 from 800 perfect score on a total perfect score on math for 800, critical reading 800, and writing 800. Well, on the new SAT, you're going to have a perfect score on the math will be 800, a perfect score on the verbal, on the critical reading will be 800, but the writing section is going to be optional, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later in this presentation. But yeah, so the perfect score is now different. It's now down to 1600, which if for some of you, if you're listening to this and you're a parent, you may recall that when you took the SAT, it was 1600. So we're going back to the good old days, pretty much. The second point here is no penalties for wrong answers. This is huge because in our practice at successprep.com, when we work with students, we give a lot of practice tests. And in grading some of those practice tests, one of the things we realize is students that are really weak, just in terms of their content knowledge and stuff, when they go onto the test, onto the SAT, the current SAT, and are not really sure about strategy, they've not really been prepped properly, what we find out is that some of them might end up actually with negative points in a section, meaning they didn't even get enough positive points. They're now into the negative, so I mean, it's just a horrible score. Well, a lot of that is because of the quarter points being taken out, because students have to be very selective on the current SAT in terms of what questions they answer. Well, they don't have to worry about that anymore with the new 2016 SAT, because with that SAT, there will be no penalties for wrong answers. No penalties for wrong answers. So that's going to change the strategy for students, because then students can not just guess willy-nilly, but still be able to guess and at least not get penalized for questions that they might have a chance at, but just are probably being too careful on the current one. On the new one, they can guess and have no penalties. So if they get it right, good. If they don't, then it doesn't really hurt them. So that's going to be a huge change on the new SAT. On the on the new SAT as well, there are going to be some more advanced math questions coming up onto the test. So we're talking about some trig questions, some pre-calculus questions. Nothing too deep. It's not like you have to have taken like a calculus class to really be able to work through those. And those questions are not going to be that many on the new SAT. So just a few questions. It's like just a really light introduction of trig and pre-calculus. And all they're really asking for here is your knowledge of SOHCAHTOA. So for example, sine, cosine, and tangent, being able to use them within the context of triangles. So very basic stuff with trig and pre-calculus. So again, if your student is well prepped, that shouldn't really be a problem. They should be able to handle that. Now, the fourth point on this top 7 changes on the new SAT 2016 is no more SAT big words. Okay. All right. So the running joke is if someone, at a party or at an event, or you guys are just hanging out with friends, and someone throws out a big word, like, oh, whoa, that's an SAT word. Well, those jokes would be kind of obsolete at this point, because on the new SAT, they will be using words that are not so obscure, meaning that these words are going to be words that are a little bit simpler and also will be found within the context of the passage. So what this pretty much means is, again, if your student has practiced enough and is kind of familiar with the format of this new SAT, what they will find is the ability to really be able to figure out the meaning of the word within the context. Is still helpful to have some strategies or prefixes and suffixes and some other, word identification strategies. But at the end of the day, a lot of the words will be a little bit easier to identify, because if you read through the passage and you're just very clear on the context of the passage, you'll be able to pretty much figure those words out. So no more big SAT words. Those jokes will be pretty much locked up in the museum of jokes at this point in terms of big SAT words. We're not going to be having that on this new SAT 2016. All right, the fifth point here, there will be a non-calculator section. This is huge too. Now, some students may look at this and say, oh, well, you know what? That right there is telling me that this new SAT is going to be hard. Well, actually, that isn't true. I've always told students for a long time in a lot of our prep classes and our math classes, I always tell them whenever a test does not have a calculator, is not allowing a calculator for a math section, that is actually a good thing. Because I've literally seen students get distracted with just typing numbers in calculators all the time as a way of solving a question. It actually slows you down. So the non-calculator section on the SAT to me is a good thing. I actually worked through a practice test recently on a full-length practice test, but specifically on the non-calculator section, what I realized is that there are 20 questions in there, 25 minutes. I was actually able to work through those questions fairly fairly okay with good time, and I was really focused in my practice test on, okay, how much time is it going to take me, and kind of considering how our students would handle a situation like this. And what I found out is, the questions are a lot more straightforward. That is an advantage you're going to get on this new SAT, where the non-calculator section is actually one of the easier sections on the test. It's faster, straightforward questions. You really don't need a calculator for it, because if they gave you a calculator for it, it would actually slow you down. So this is a very good thing. Obviously, there's still a calculator section that is 37 questions, 55 minutes. So, and overall, just on the math section of the new SAT, you just have more time compared to the old SAT. All right, the new SAT is going to have an essay section, just like the old one, but it's going to be optional. It's going to be optional. You're going to have more time to write it. Now, students would say, oh, wow, that's great. I don't have to do the essay. Not so fast, really, because most colleges actually like to see students have an essay section. Now, am I saying every college will look at you kind of cross-eyed if you don't put in an essay section? I'm not saying that. I'm just saying usually most colleges prefer to have it. So my advice would be for you to definitely reach out to the schools you're looking at and ask them, hey, on the new SAT, do you really need me to have an essay section, or will you prefer it? So just kind of get a sense that way. But we found out, like for example, on the ACT, which has an optional essay section as well, we found that students just end up taking it. But again, it's optional, so you don't absolutely have to. All right, the very final point here on the top 7 changes to the new SAT 2016. The top final point here is you're going to have more charts and graphs like the ACT science section. Now, am I saying there's going to be a science section on the new SAT? No, I'm not saying that. But you're going to have charts and graphs. If you've taken the ACT test before, the science section has a lot of charts and graphs. Well, this new SAT will have lots more charts and graphs on the math section. Unlike the current SAT, which has some graphs but not that much. But on this new one, you're going to have a lot more charts and graphs. The charts and graphs are not too bad. It's really just a bunch of questions giving you an opportunity to look at the graph and answer a question kind of based on what you're seeing from the graph. So it's just data analysis. We want to be able to make sure you can relate the information on a graph, the picture on a graph, to the questions you're going to be asked. So there you have it. Top 7 changes to the new SAT 2016. Really lots of new changes here. Is the test going to be harder? Not necessarily. I actually think certain sections of the test will be a lot easier. I think a lot more straightforward. The SAT actually is beginning to look a lot more like the ACT in some ways, but again, just a lot more straightforward questions and straight to the point. I like the non-calculator section. The words, the vocabulary words will be a little bit easier within more within the context of the passage. That's a good thing. And there are no penalties, no wrong penalties, no penalties for wrong answers. So that's awesome. Again, I wish you all the very best as you prepare for your test prep, as you prepare for your SAT test, and wish you the very best. Join us definitely at successprep.com, and we have lots of really good tools there, lots of prep, lots of tutoring, lots of options to help you be successful. And I will see you at the top.